So it's Memorial Day weekend. My crew has 3 days off in a row. I'm sure they're happy with that. They need a break, I think. I need a break too. We're all getting kind of ground down a little bit from the last few months. We're all done making nukes, and we're really concentrating on getting our colonies in shape now for the summer and upcoming sourwood flow. We hope sourwood flow. We've been doing a lot of requeening. We're doing it in several ways. We're using nucs to requeen. We're using nucs that were built over double screen boards to requeen. We're introducing cells. We're introducing caged mated queens, and it just depends on circumstances in that particular yard and what we want to accomplish in a given yard. Some yards have been split completely down. All the queens are gone. We have cells introduced. Some of the colonies are requeening themselves if they swarmed. We leave a couple swarm cells behind and let them requeen themselves that way. The queens that we're introducing now are ours. We're producing these queens. They're not purchased from anybody else. I know many of the viewers know that we purchased queens from Indian Summer Honey Farm in the early spring for making nucs and packages. Those are not what we're using to requeen our own colonies. I have no problem with them. Chris makes really good queens, but we're trying to push this Caucasian line, so we're trying to make our own queens for requeening our own outfit. We are probably 2/3 the way done requeening all of our colonies. It's a big task, and many people question, you know, the reason for requeening every colony every year. It's a lot of work, which means for me it's a lot of money. And I've really thought about this a lot, and I really do think that the trade-off is worth it. And of course we lose a few colonies. Not every colony accepts their queen. They try to raise their own, and sometimes that doesn't work. For somebody that has only 3 or 4 colonies, that's probably not acceptable. For me, it is quite acceptable to lose a colony here or there because we have so many. It's not a problem. Quite frankly, we got too many colonies, so if I lose a few, I don't worry about it. And plus, we have so many nucs, we can just fix that spot with a nuc if we want. I took a little bit of video that I'm going to show as part of this of us working through some yards that got requeened with cells entirely. No caged queens involved. It was all queen cells. If I have the time and the wherewithal to do that, I really prefer requeening with cells because it gives the colonies a really nice brood break of at least a couple weeks. I think that's a healthy thing. I think that colonies that have swarmed actually have a beneficial broodless period. I think that's part of the overall scheme of things. When a colony swarms, I think it kind of gives the bees a chance to clean house a little bit. Things settle down and they start anew, and I really like seeing a brand new queen lay, and you can really read the pattern. You're not looking at anything that was there before she was introduced, so that's something I really like to do. But I also admit that we introduce a lot of queens too, because in some instances I don't want to lose that 2 to 3 weeks of brood rearing, depending on what's going to occur in the near future. Like in some instances we have these yards that are going to be trying to get ready for sourwood flow, and 2 or 3 weeks of no brood rearing at the wrong time could actually cost us in those instances. The very best way, honestly, to get a colony super ready for honey flow is to requeen it with a nuc if you can. Smaller units accept queens much easier than larger units. It can really be kind of a task to get a large colony to accept a queen. There are times when it works better than others. One would be during a nectar flow. If the bees are preoccupied with a nectar flow, that's a good time to try to get queens introduced. We have a few tricks up our sleeves. I'll show that in just a moment, how we buy ourselves an extra day or two before the bees can eat their way through the candy when we're introducing queens. You can kind of make your own flow if you want by feeding, but you have to be so careful not to feed in such a way that could cause a robbing problem. I really don't like using things like Honeybee Healthy and stuff that can be overstimulating and cause robbing when I'm trying to requeen. Perhaps a jar with a few holes in the lid, or a bucket that's right over the hole so there's no chance of syrup running out from underneath the bucket on the lid. Right now we're pretty lucky. We've had a pretty steady nectar flow. Some days have been slow, some days have been intense, but we haven't had much robbing yet. So once robbing season starts, which in our case could happen soon because the major honey sources are starting to slow down and go away, once robbing occurs, it's really much more difficult to get queens introduced, and that might be a time when a cell might be more attractive, quite frankly. Let's see. Anyway, we're collecting queens from our own queen mating nucs and caging them. That's how we're coming up with our queens that we're going to introduce into colonies. It's time consuming just finding the queen, and we don't always find her. Sometimes we have to skip a colony because we just can't find her. And we write on the lids. We kind of have our own little hieroglyphics that we write on a lid that explains to us when we're looking at a certain colony whether it's been requeened, whether it's had a queen cell, or did it swarm or whatever. And so it's important that we keep a given lid with a colony. We don't swap lids around, we don't change them, because there's a story on every lid. I'll get a lid and show what we write here in just a moment. Anyway, just a short video. Don't have a lot going on that I can show, just some short video from a couple yards, and just to say that we're really busy requeening right now, trying to get our colonies ready for sourwood. When we're introducing caged queens, we like to do a little trick that buys us a little time. We take some masking tape, put it over the candy, and then poke a hole with something about the size of a frame nail, and that will buy you a day or two before the bees can get through the candy. You have to poke, see if I can get that in focus, you have to poke the hole through the masking tape, or the bees may not realize that there's candy on the other side. And you need to use cheap masking tape, the really good stuff. The blue painter's tape is not good. The bees have a hard time chewing through it, so just get inexpensive, this is 3/4 inch masking tape. That works really good. We're occasionally asked how we keep records, and to be real honest, it's nothing fancy. I just keep a notebook in the truck. Jesse keeps one too, kind of telling us what we did in a yard on a given day. Hopper, supered, 9 empty spots. Shane, 100% means 100% requeened, supers, nothing fancy. If we have any special notations we need to know about an individual colony, we just do it on the lid. For instance, if a colony got requeened, we might say I, for a short for introduction. If it got a cell, and the date. Let's say it had a virgin queen in it, VQ, and the date. Let's see, what else what might we see? We even make a distinction if it's a new cell, like if we leave it with a cell that's not sealed yet, we'll write NC for new cell. That way we know when we come back we have to allow it a little more time before we make a real judgment on it. You can, use an initial for a lot of words, a lot of names, and that's how we handle it. And also that's why I tell the crew, very important that a lid stay with its colony. We can't shuffle lids around in a yard because we might not know what happened in that specific colony if we were messing with lids. Okay, we were here a month ago. Every colony was left with a cell, every single one of them. And even the ones that have a super on them were left with a cell. We made a lot of splits. You can see all the nuke boxes sitting on top of colonies, and we took nuke boxes away too. And this is a fairly busy situation, if that's the right word. This is kind of a busy yard for mating. A lot of virgin queens running around at the same time. So if I had to guess, I would say we're probably going to have a success rate of around 70 or 75%. Hopefully it'll be a little better, but when you have so many virgins mating in one spot with colonies and nukes and everything, it tends not to be the very best. So, guys, what we're going to do here, every colony gets checked, of course. Anything that's a dud, we will slip a nuke down in there and fix it. There's got to be enough good nukes here. An airplane going by. Have a little local airfield just over the hill. The good news, when we're done, everything will have a brand new queen in it. And the bees are coming in an interesting fashion. They're coming in slow and deliberate, so I'd say there's some sort of nectar flowing, although I'm not sure what it would be because the poplars are done and the blackberries are done. I'll have a look at that. That turned out a little better than I thought. We had 52 units mating here between the colonies and the nukes, and we're taking 10 empty nuke boxes with us, so that means there was 10 duds. Some of the nukes got used for requeening colonies that didn't make it, and some of the nukes were duds too. We left some of these nukes up on top to still have a queen in them. It's going to be a really good yard in about a month with these brand new queens. They're just starting to lay. They're just starting to have sealed brood. The sourwood in this location, we're in Clayton, is probably about 4.5 weeks away. So these colonies are going to peak right on time. Hopefully we won't have much swarming here. There's always a little bit of swarming right before the sourwood, especially with singles. As you can see, we put supers on most of them. They're in pretty good shape. I was impressed. So all in all, better than I thought. 10 out of 52 were duds. Now this colony is exactly the same thing. Every colony was left with a cell. We did some of those weird splits where we put boxes over a lid without even a double screen board, just left them an entrance underneath. Looks like this one's entrance is right here. Anyway, we just split this thing entirely to pieces and left a cell in every single colony. We'll see what kind of take we got here. These bees are in really good shape. We're getting good mating here. Everything's turning out pretty good. They made a lot of honey. These upper boxes were actually mostly foundation when we left, and they're all full of honey. We're shaking them down, or finding the queen and putting her down, putting an excluder over the single. This box has no sugar in it, I know. We didn't feed them. So I want that deep full of tulip poplar honey right there. Even the nukes are turning out pretty good. That's a nice looking little nuke right there. So they've done well here. So Seth's just shaking his down. Top deep's full of honey. This one looks pretty good too, huh, Seth?
Yeah, buddy.
About the same percentage of take here, I'd say. We used all of the nukes to requeen the dud colonies. We went through several nukes, but they're all brand new queens. That's such a good feeling, having all brand new queens in these yards. We're getting there. I'm going down the list. In a couple weeks, they'll all be done. Big job. When people think of making sure that 15 or 1,600 colonies all have new queens, that's a daunting task. But we're getting there. We really are. These are going to peak right when the sourwood starts blooming. This could be a really good yard of bees if we can just keep the wheels from spinning off of this thing. It's going to be a dynamite yard of bees for sourwood. They all are, actually. Everything's starting to really start to look good. These things are full of bees. We put a fresh super on some of them.